I think I'll just quickly go back here because I forgot to start recording. It's recording now, so I'll jump through the slides fairly quick. Again, this is an introduction to CDS, what it is and what is not, how to get started, best practices, then the agenda overview, what is CDS, what is CDM, components, building a model, getting data into that model, accelerator, and useful links. We are using the book from David and Juliak. All right, let's get right to it. So what is CDS? So CDS is essentially the key component of the Power Platform as it stands now. Now, a lot of the folks coming from a SharePoint background, they will debate my affirmation, but based on what we have seen in the strategy from Microsoft, CDS is the core. It's the main point, and it should be the place that ties everything together. Um, and CDS provides both data storage and business logic execution. So within CDS, you get essentially the best of both worlds. You can design your data model as well as extend that data model with basic and some enhanced business logic. CDS implements the common data model, which the acronym is CDM. So a lot of times you see folks referring to CDS, but they are referring to CDM and vice versa. There is that confusion in the market. At first, there was confusion because of Microsoft's strategy itself. They started calling this one thing, and then they changed it to the other thing, and then they started using both acronyms. But think about CDS as a service that entails the data storage itself as well as service that provides business logic on top. Whereas CDM is pretty much just the model itself. If you come from a database background, think about CDM as your table structure. All right. So while CDS is fairly new to folks, especially folks who came from maybe a SharePoint background or folks that were exposed to Power Automate. While this is relatively new, for people who have been working in Dynamics CRM, CDS is pretty much what we have seen um, in our career history. I remember talking with a friend of mine probably 3 or 4 years ago, and we were talking about the dynamic CRM backend, how it hasn't changed in forever. How it remained the same at that time. From Dynamics 4, Dynamics 2011, 13, 15, we got a few features, but the backend remained the same. And then in talking with that friend, I told him, hey, it would be super nice if Microsoft would extract this core and just create a business application engine. If they would expose this so that, folks who are designing databases, essentially SQL Server databases, they could use this as part of their design. And then voila, you could have an app that's ready for your business users, as well as a database that can be, used by other applications. So that's essentially what Microsoft has done. They took the core, the customization piece of Dynamics CRM, and they rebranded and renamed and made it a lot better than what it used to be and call it CDS. All right. Moderator, how are you doing so far? Any questions?
No.
All right. Okay, let's move on. So there is a wide variety of choices for data storage in the market today. You know, folks who work in an office, they are exposed to multiple Excel files. I remember back in my day as just a developer. When I started as a Visual Basic developer in Visual Basic 3. I know that's really old, but I'm only 25, so I'm young still. Anyhow, um, there were lots of people using Access database at the time as well, and a lot of folks still using SharePoint as a way to store data, and then also SQL Server, be it or SQL, be it SQL Server or Oracle. If you look around, even today, with the new technologies, you have NoSQL databases and all. So there are lots of ways to store data, and they all have their own advantages, and they have also issues with the technology itself. I mean, I've worked in places that the whole business ran on an Excel spreadsheet, multiple functions and data everywhere on the file, and then the file grew big and people could no longer use it anymore. And the same for Access. I've seen an industry actually running operations on an Access database, and because Access had limitations in size, folks started to segregate databases. So they would use one particular database file, and then when that file got too big, they would spin off another file and move on. So, I mean, you do what you got to do with what you have. But those technologies were not designed to be relational databases and databases that manage a large amount of data. And so the same discussion, I know some people will throw some rocks, especially if we have some SharePoint folks on the call, but SharePoint is the same way. You can do a lot of things with SharePoint lists, but when it comes time for you to start to, using relationship, the person that's in this list, is this person related to this other data that exists on another list? How easy is a SharePoint to handle, relationships for that matter? So the goal of CDS is to work as the database medium between all these technologies. Maybe you have a file that's currently being populated by, by a secretary, and you want to take that data, import it, process, and then make it available on another application. So essentially, that's the goal for CDS, to be a core database where all of these data entry points that you have in your organization can leverage that in a way that the data is structured, the data can be used relationally, and you can export it to all the systems. Any questions so far, Helper?
Nope.
All right. Thank you. Oops. So now that we understood a bit better what CDS, let's talk about CDM. So the CDM is essentially just a place that stores the entity. And again, if you're coming from a database background, you can replace entity for table at this stage. But the CDM will store those data definitions commonly used in your business application. CDM does not describe how the tables or the entities should be used itself. It just stores the structure of that particular entity. So you have a table that you want to store customer information. You create that definition using CDM. CDS is use that definition. CDS decides what happens, when data is created. What do you want to do? Do you want to send an email, a welcome email to that customer? Do you want to maybe set up a call 3 days from today, so on and so forth? So CDM is your data structure. CDS will host what do you do with the data once the data lands into the database. Okay. So in this next picture, and if you could please type if you are able to see it. If not, I can try to make it bigger. But it defines what is part of the CDM schema, okay, and what can be extended if you install the different products in Dynamics from the Dynamics family. So this is core, and of course there's the 3 dots because there are more entities associated with it, and the number of entities grow by the minute. Every time there is a new release, there is a new something that goes into the core as well as the application. But this image here gives you an overview of what the strategies behind, decoupling, if you will, for to an extent, CDS entities, and also noting what entities are part of each particular product line in Dynamics. I'm pretty sure if you have navigated on the web, especially on LinkedIn, you found videos about Dynamics 365 sales, Dynamics 365 customer service, Dynamics 365 FNO, 36 FNO here, one beside the other. And then you have BC, Business Central, Commerce. There is now Dynamics 365 for retail, for HR, so on and so forth. They all have their own specific entities, but those entities rely on the CDM core schema. All right. So I want to look at this picture and also explain something that we're going to look more in depth in a few minutes. But if you see this big kind of greenish circle, think about it as a environment in the CDS or in the Power Platform. An environment contains, entities associated with it and other objects related to Dynamics or to the Power Platform. Sorry, and also contains things that are grouped into files, if you will, to facilitate how it's managed. Okay. All right, I got a question here. Do we need to design the CDM first before using CDS, or we don't need to do anything with CDM before using CDS? That's a great question. So the when you first install and create an environment, and we're going to look at that pretty soon here, you get the basic core entities for that are available with CDM, with the initial version. If your business needs to store data in another entity, you can go ahead and create entities that are specific to your business. Now, if your business is going to use Dynamics for sales, then there is no need for you to create a competitor entity in CDS or CDM for that matter, because you're going to install this app and the app will install the Dynamics, its own competitor entity. Okay. So as I was talking, think about this greenish, bluish square here as your environment where all entities live and automation and all that. And then these small areas here as solution files. And we'll talk about that in a second here, but try to wrap your head around, I have an environment here that has all the entities, but I can also group the entities and some other objects into smaller groups that I can then move to different environments. So far, so good. All right, moving on. How do we get started? I have put two links here. If you don't have a tenant available that you can work with, the top link gives you a way to create what's known as a community plan. Community plan is basically a sandbox environment that you can use to test the technology. You can create, your entities, you can create apps, I should probably mention, if you don't have an environment, I would strongly suggest you create one, maybe tonight, or maybe I don't know where you're watching it from. Maybe you are in the morning, but right this moment to create an environment or an environment, because a lot of the sessions tomorrow will be built on top of existing environment. Whomever's going to talk about building Power Apps is going to use an environment. Whomever's going to talk about Power Automate, you're going to need an environment for that, so on and so forth. So I strongly suggest you create one. But the community plan is only good for one user. So you cannot really build an enterprise application here and release it for your business, unless your business is a one-side business. But legally, though, it's it's um, it's for one person for testing purpose. Okay. And then if you have an existing tenant, you can log into admin.powerapps.com and you can use an existing tenant. Now, depending on the account that you use to get into powerapps.com, you may be doing things within your business tenant. So you got to be careful with that as well. All right. So we're going to have a quick demo and we're going to go fairly slow, step by step, make sure that you are following me. And hopefully by the end of this demo, you'll be able to create your first CDS environment and app. Okay, got a question here. Is CDS the same as in BI as we call data warehouse? Well, yes and no. It really depends how you're going to use the database to store information. CDS could store transaction information about your business appointments. It could store all sorts of things, information about products that you sell. So not necessarily a data warehouse, but because Power Automate is a integration and migration tool, you could within the Power Platform, you could use Power Automate to process information, do some ETL, and then store some sort of like data warehouse or process data into CDS if you'd like to do it that way. Okay. All right. So we are going to look at an environment. So I'm gonna access my own environment. Okay, I have gone to admin.powerapps.com. Microsoft will use two addresses interchangeably. Eventually, we'll get you one, but regardless in which one you land, they will push you to the right place. So since I'm getting old and I can't remember a whole lot of stuff most of the time, I just memorize this one and that gets me to where I need to be. Okay. So once you're in this place, you can click to create a new environment. Let me check that. So you can click new. You're going to choose a name for your environment. You'll decide what type of environment it is, if it's sandbox, production, or trial. Again, if you're using your business accounts to get here, be careful on how you select your environment type because that will incur costs to your company. So again, going back to my slide real quick, if you just want to do sandbox tests, use the community plan. All right. So you can provide name, type of the environment, region, purpose, and you want to do this. You want to create the database for this environment. And what that means is it's going to create the data structure, the CDM data structure for your Power Platform environment. All right. Once that's done, I'm going to just give a name here. All right. Hit next. It's going to ask for what language you want to run this and the currency that you are going to use for your environment. Now, my account, I believe my account set up for the US, and it didn't ask the data center that I want to use, but it will ask you where you want to host your CDS environment. I have another question from Rosalie. For first-time users, should we use Sandbox? Yes, you should use Sandbox. Trial is good too, but trial expires in 30 days. So Sandbox is the preferable way to do it. Very good. All right, so after that, you can hit save and you're good to go. The environment will be created and then you get a line here for you. So this is my environment. Because I am on the admin panel, I have a few options here. I can look at if my environment is subject or has an available update. Just I think yesterday, James Phillips and folks were talking about the new features on 2020 release wave 1, and it's been available for us to try for quite some time now. So this is a way for you to activate the new features if you want to. If not, you can just move on. You can also change the URL that will follow your environment's name. I'm not gonna change mine now, but if you want, you can change yours. Okay, once that's done, we're gonna move on to the app builder environment. Here's the admin side of things. We're gonna move to the app builder. And how do I access that? You go to make.powerapps.com, hit enter, and now things will get more interesting. I have a list of environments that I can play with. If for some reason when you land on this page, you can't really identify your previous changes for CDS, you can always go back to the environment, the right environment. So I have a few environments. This is the one we're going to use today. Now on my environment, just to give you an overview of this, control panel, you see here that I have a few apps that I have previously created. In fact, the website that you look at for this conference was built on the Power Platform. If you watched Julie X's session, she talked about Power Apps portals. So this app is one of the apps that I created and is sitting on my environment. I have a couple of other apps that were installed by default. When I created the portal, it created the portal management app, and the Solution Health Hub is just a default when you create the database within your environment. So in my presentation, I talked about environments, the big bluish, greenish box, and I talked about solutions. Solutions will group entities and other components within the your CDS, your CDS database. So I'm going to click on this particular solution. I had created one previously. I'm going to show you how to create one. All right, this is my simple solution. Okay. One of the attributes here of my solution is the publisher. You know, it's always good to create your own publisher. Reason being is because when you start creating objects in CDS, it will prefix your objects with the publisher's prefix. So if you want to ensure that an entity was created by you, the best way to do is to create a publisher. And it's done one time every time you create a solution. So I can click to add a publisher. I get a pop-up. We get the previous screen from Dynamics, previous style, but we'll get to the new soon. So my publisher, I'll call it the Sample App Builder Publisher. Okay, and I can decide what the prefix will be for the publisher. So I'll call it sample. You can call it the name of your business if it doesn't exceed the amount of characters. Every time you create an entity or if you create objects in Dynamics that requires prefixing, it will automatically use the prefix that you used here. All right. So I don't need to move forward with this one because I have already created my publisher and it's associated with my solution. All right. So I'm going to open my solution. And in this solution, I don't have any components. But in my sample, I said, I want to create an application that allows me to book appointments. So though Dynamics provide that particular feature on more extended product lines, I'm still going to create a custom entity to book my appointments with customers, okay? So the name of my entity, I'll call it, I don't want to just call it appointments, I'll call it THEP for therapy appointment. Let's suppose that this is my business does therapy and whatnot, or maybe I should say uh, sometimes creativity for these names are is what's lacking. But so I'll call it session. All right, I'll have a therapy session with my customer. All right. So when I create an entity, Dynamics creates the primary key for that entity. It's a GUID, and sorry for the technical terms for folks who are not from the industry. It's a unique identifier, but it also creates a name-based field that's used for a lot of the components that will be created automatically, as well as internally in the database as an index. It's just a way for the database to find information quicker. Okay, I can decide whether or not I want to add the ability for folks to add notes and attachments to this particular record, and I'm gonna say yes to that. So with that, let me expand the extended settings. I can put a description on my entity that can be reused for when you hover over the entity or for documentation. It's really important as well. Here I can decide what type of ownership the records in this entity should have. So what it means is, so I'm creating session records. Sessions will be associated with customers. Now, I may have a team of receptionists in my business who have to follow up with the customers a day before they come to a session. All right. So I can, by setting up ownership to a user or a team, I can, when I create an appointment, I can say, this particular session, it will be the responsibility of my, receptionist one, or Sarah, if that's her name, to follow up, to call the customer before the session. So now, if you come from the database universe or niche, think about what we are doing here as in comparison to just data structure definition in SQL Server. In SQL Server, you can create a table. You can tell, all right, I'm going to have a name field, and it's going to have so many characters, so on and so forth. But a lot of this logic, though, that CDS is giving you for free, you'd have to build on your application, you know? So I'm a dev. I love coding. I come from that background. I have done this for most of my life now. And I love to code. There's nothing better for me than coding when it comes to my profession. But if you can think, the amount of effort that you'd have to place to create the same type of structure and feature, if you will, on a SQL Server database running on an MVC application. It's just insane. All right. So that's what we were talking about. This part is essentially CDM. This part, it's service. It's the service that's allowing you to guide your business rules. All right. So I can go ahead and create. The following option cannot be disabled after you're enabled, and that's fine. So now we have an entity here. Actually, the Dynamics is telling me that it's saving. So let's wait a little bit. And hopefully, because I'm sharing my screen, it's not taking a dent on my bandwidth. So we're gonna wait for this information to be saved. All right, so my entity is created, and you can see that it created a bunch of fields. Again, a lot of the fields created here will be used in logic. So business logic, if you will. Now I can see when a record was created. I can see when it was modified, was created by whom, was modified by whom. A lot of information that if I have to do it by hand, it'll take a lot of time. Got a question here from Ashraf. Where can I add more columns to this session entity? Also, where can I build relationships with other entities? Hey, Ashraf, you gotta step on the brake there, man. You're stepping ahead of me. Just wait a bit. All right, that's where we're going actually. So in my entity or my session entity, I want to create a column to store the customer that is that will be part of this particular appointment or session, if you will. So we click to add a field. I'll give it a name. I'll call it customer. And these are the field types available in Dynamics. All right. You have text, text area, email, URL, so on and so forth, whole number, date and time, currency, customer, and then lookup. Now, there are two core types in the CDS that I skipped during my presentation, and it's worthwhile talking about. So let me go back to the PowerPoint real quick, and let's talk about those. The two of the core entities in Dynamics are account and contact. Accounts are businesses, companies, not necessarily your companies. You could store information about other companies here, maybe your companies who provide work for you. Sorry, not your customers, but companies that you rely on services, if you will. Okay, and you have contact. Contact are essentially people. Now, when you're going to create a field in Dynamics, first thing you're gonna see, and sometimes this is hard for folks to break out, is this customer field. What it is folks at Microsoft, they created a field that can host um, the two types of possible customers, a person or an account. In our scenario, um, we are not going to host a session in our therapeutic clinic with a company directly. So our scenario are mostly related to people, B2C, if you will, customers. So what we are going to use in this scenario is a lookup field. The lookup field essentially established the one-to-many or many-to-one in that scenario relationship between two entities. And what I'm going to find here on the list is the contact field. I'm going to tell that this field is going to be required in my application, and then I have other options. If I want to rename the underlying relationship name, I can change it here. Some of the folks who are on the call that comes from the Dynamics CRM background will remember that the naming convention for this type of field was just ginormous in the Dynamics CRM days, and they did a little bit of a better job handling that here. All right. Again, we can also enter the description, something that would indicate and identify what this field is for. It's important to put it, but I'm not gonna do it for the sake of the demo, so we don't lose time. All right, so I hit done here, and then one thing that you have to keep in mind also, if you were used to using the previous customization engine of Dynamics CRM, by the time that you save a field, it creates the field. It's not the case here with this user experience. I can create 50 fields, and it only saves when I hit save. It's good because it saves us a lot of time, but you also always have to remember you are dealing with a web application. If your connection shuts off after you create 50 fields, but you didn't save, you're gonna lose the work. So use it wisely. All right, so we got our field here. It's a lookup pointing to contact, good to go. We're gonna create another field, and this field I want to log how the session went. So I'm just gonna call it description. make it a text area. All right, I can look at the advanced options. It's a text area. 100 characters is not enough, so let's make it 5,000 characters, and I'll make it a required field as well. I guess 4,000. Well, that's okay. That's something that I need to look into and report if they're limiting us to 4,000 characters. That's not right. Anyhow, done. Save. And we have essentially we have the fields for the session. There is a couple more fields that I want actually. I want the session date when the session took place, and I can choose the data type. Um, if I wanted to log, start and finish to see how long the session went, I could do that. For the sake of time, I'm just going to use date type. Date only, sorry. Make it required as well. There are some other behaviors associated with date time. The way that Dynamics store the date, it stores the dates as UTC, universal time. So I can, if I decide to do so, change the behavior of the data storage. I can make it time zone independent so that if I have a huge clinic, going across different time zones, when people look at this date, they see the same date. Or I can leave it local, and what it means is, whomever looks at this record, depending on where they are in the globe, they would see it on their time zone. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. My table is essentially done. Now I'm going to build the user interface for my application. First, I'm going to change the form where people can input this information. So I can click main. This is the main form. Ashraf is asking if there is a way for us to hide the non-business data fields. Yes. So essentially, the backend, this area that we were creating fields and looking at things, is restricted to folks who perform admin control over CDS. And what your business folks would see is the forms and the views associated with the work. Okay, they will not get into creating fields and whatnot. So I have my form designer here. I'm going to drag the fields that I want there. So now I have the customer on the form. I'm going to add the session date and the description. Now the description is showing as one line. I can click here and change the properties if they allow me to do that. Formatting here, field height, it's going to be, let's do 4. And then now I can you see my fields increasing there. I can save. Then I can go ahead and publish my form. All right, then I can go back. And now we looked at forms, we're gonna look at views. I'm just going to change one of the views. And then you can do this exercise on your own. So I'm going to add customer column. Before that, I'm going to add the date. Okay, and that's good for now. Then I'll save and publish. Okay, and I'll go back to my solution file. Now I have an entity, I have fields, and I have my views ready to go. So now what I will do is I'll quickly create what's known as a model-driven app, because I need to expose this entity so that folks can essentially use it, okay? So I'm going to click New, App, and I'm going to create a model-driven app. My app is going to be called Session Management. Oops. Let me save it. Then the sitemap, I need to configure the sitemap. Oh. And the entity here that I want, the first one will be contact. Second one is session. So my app is published. Now I have my app. I can click on it, and we used to have a button that allows us to play our app. That's fine. Now I can go back to my apps area, and I can click on the session management, and I will get an error. Requested record was not found or does not have sufficient permission for it. That's lovely. Let's go back to solutions and publish everything. Okay, let me click on the solution and publish all. All right, let's see if our app is going to work now. I think we got all. All right, so here's our app, and you have an area for contacts. I can click to create new. Again, this part is basic CDS. So my first contact, Victor Dantas. I'm going to save this. Then I can go to sessions, click new, give a funky name for the session. First session, customer, I can type and it will look for existing fields. The date, say that it's next Thursday, and I can put some details here. First session, blah, blah, blah. And I can go ahead and save it. Very simple entity, very simple experience, but a lot of functionality for, a design that took us, about 15 minutes to get done. Now, let's suppose that I have a bunch of data elsewhere that I need to bring to my CDS database. Now I can go to flows, and this I'm not going to demo completely, uh, just because it's outside of the scope of this demo. But I wanted to show you the possibilities. So I'm in flow now, and I can use the various packages, existing packages, to bring data to CDS, or I can create my own. Okay, so I'm gonna hit new. I'm gonna create an instant flow, meaning that it's a flow that's triggered by me. Okay, whenever I want to run this, I'm gonna come here and execute it. Then I can click to decide the next step. So let's say that I have an Excel file with that particular information. So Excel, if it's online, if it's business, so I can pick one. Sorry, I should put it as a file. New. So I can list the rows in a table. Here it's going to create a connection to Excel Online. Where does the file exist? What's the name of the document library, so on and so forth. And then let's say that my next step would be to use CDS. So from there, I can say create record and then point to the entity that I have in CDS. There's a lot more to this package than just what I'm saying, but I want to just to convey that how easy it is to get data into CDS. All right, so there is that. There is also, if you want to create an app that will be used on your cell phone, you can come here and say, I want to create an app. I have three options, but for mobile devices, you have Canvas or model driven. You can create Canvas apps. Then you can decide what is the data source, for your Canvas app. Select your connection. And let's say that I want to do session management in my app. So CDS will take, or Power Platform, the designer will take a few moments and create an app for you. And this app can be used on your mobile devices. So let's wait for it to run. So let's see a preview of my app. Again, I mean, I'm going fairly quickly here just to show the potential for it. By no means this is an app that's, easy, ready for use, but you got a lot of work for a lot of features for very little work. So I can see my app when it was created, the session date. If I invest time in learning Power Apps, then I can now extend it. I can create a label, I can show the description, maybe I can open the customer record, make changes to it, and so on and so forth. All right. So back to the presentation for now. Let's talk about a few other things before we run out of time. There is a library, and it's part of my presentation. So whenever we make this slide decks available, you'll be able to download it and see. But there is a website, a Microsoft site that stores a bunch of industry accelerators, and what they are is think about all the different industries out there. Microsoft has created solution files with along with other features to allow companies to get going with CDS faster than normal, if you will. There are, I think, 4 or 5 accelerators today, and they implement and they create the data structure along with features for a specific industry. There's the particular screenshot that you see here is for the automotive industry. So you have inventory, you have service appointments, so on and so forth. And essentially, all you need is an instance of, well, CDS for the basic, the core features of this particular accelerator. And then if you have other apps like sales and customer service, you can use it more extensively. So I make this information available here in the accelerators option. There is free CDS training available by Microsoft, a set of videos and some exercises. There are CDS tools for developers who are trying to, manage CDS environments better, and there is a ton of tools under the XRM toolbox that you can leverage for your work as well. Again, the goal is to get you started, give you an overview of what it is, what it does, and inspire you to start your learning experience. Now, I took a lot of questions during the session, but if you have any additional questions, please pose them now. There was someone who said, is it possible to enrich these entities and publish to other customers? Yes. The way you do it, remember that I created solution files. You can take those solution files and then you can export it out of your dynamics, so other company or out of your environment to other environments, or either your business has different environments and they wanted to use it, or other companies who want to do that. So we got a few more questions here, and this is your own camera. Are there any differences in creating entity solutions either in Power Apps or in the CRM solution customization? Well, you can do it in either way, but I noticed starting yesterday that the navigation is pushing you to the new Power Platform experience right now. So I don't know for how long you'd be able to use it the old. I know that if you land on the settings solutions, you'll be pushed into the new screen experience. Somebody asked me to go to the previous slide, so let me go back. All right, so there you have it. There is a tension between using the new user experience in the old one, and I can understand why folks are hesitant to use the new, because the new has quite a bit of bugs. Still, it's a lot better than it was when it was first released, but there is still stuff that doesn't work properly. I'd say though, try to use the new, because essentially that's what's going to remain. And go from there. Provide feedback. I mean, you won't believe how open Microsoft professionals are for feedback. Kind of structure what you're trying to convey, send it over. You can send it to me or any other MVPs, or you can sign on to the forums and kind of report a bug and go from there. Is CDS tools a Microsoft portal or community portal? I don't know for certain. I need to have a look. I don't know. And I think what you're asking, if it's a Power Apps portal, or if it's a... Oh, okay. If it's a Microsoft-owned experience, or... I don't think so. I think it's a community portal, the same as XRM Toolbox. It's a set of tools done by the community. All right, I can take a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. All right, so let's move on. Leslie, though, I'd say I use this quote in pretty much every single presentation that I do. The best way for us to get better is to help other people. We don't know it all, but we don't know. I was about to use a Mr. T's quote, you know, we don't know it all, but we don't know nothing. We know something. And that something we know can make a difference in somebody's life. And it actually makes a whole lot of difference in your own life when you share it. You know, there's only one way to get better is by sharing your knowledge with other people. So whatever you learn today, put it in practice. And when you feel comfortable, share with somebody that might take profit from what you know. um, yeah, that's my mentor there. Share it, share it, share it. I think there was a question from Jade. Jade, how do you extend Canvas apps? There is a presentation. If you look at the schedule, there is a presentation on Power Apps. I think Power Apps from, I think it's Jamie who's presenting it. Uh, yeah, check him out because he will only talk about Power Apps, so you'll be better assisted there. So yeah, look at the schedule. I don't know in which time zone and he will deliver it, but I know that it's gonna be good. So it's worth your while.
Sunday.
Sunday. Sunday. All right. Yeah, Jamie's gonna he's gonna lead on the Power Apps training, so it's gonna be very nice. Alrighty. Last thing, if you can fill out a survey, we'll put the link on the chat as well. But you can scan it using the QR code, and share this conference online. You know, use your channels, maybe LinkedIn channels. Just put a word out. We want to hear from you and see if the conference added value to your career. We are pretty excited to be able to help, but also expecting to see good stories. All right. The QR code is the same for all sessions. So if you have done one, um, you've done one for that session. If you want to provide feedback for different sessions, it'd be great. All right. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care. Appreciate your time.